John, the first chapter, verses 43 through 46 reads thusly. The next day, Jesus wanted to go to Galilee. He found Philip and told him, "Follow me." Philip was from Bethsaida, the hometown of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the man whom Moses wrote about in his teachings, and whom the prophets wrote about. He is Jesus, son of Joseph, from the city of Nazareth." Nathanael said to Philip, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?"
In the 1940s and 1950s, the same question was asked of the predominantly black neighborhood of Ridgewood, near the Eau Claire section of Columbia, South Carolina. Many times it was asked, "Can anything good come from Ridgewood?" Consider the facts you're about to witness about the people of Ridgewood, and then you be the judge.
I often wonder about the rumors that, Ridgewood was a bad place and had bad people. It's totally in contrast to my experience growing up in that community during the 40s and 50s. The community was very cohesive, very tight, and so while you had people who lived in the neighborhood who did have some varying income levels, nobody ever went hungry, and nobody ever had need, because it was just so normal to share what you had with your neighbors. And back then, people who could had their own gardens, and they raised their own, animals, and everybody had chickens and all of that sort of stuff. But I think most importantly for me was what I learned about Ridgewood after I left Ridgewood. And as I began to become much more aware of, because I was a seeker of the real history of Black people, and as I became more aware of what we did not know about our history simply because we were not allowed to know it, it caused me to think more about Ridgewood from that point of view, a more adult point of view. And then I thought about all of the people in Ridgewood who had distinguished themselves in so many ways, even in that Jim Crow climate. My father was the first Black police officer that for the city of Columbia. Now, of course, he didn't patrol in Ridgewood because that was outside the boundaries of the city of Columbia. And I actually never really recall actually seeing a law officer in Ridgewood. Although a lot of the men spent time on the chain gang, I don't know actually how they were arrested or who came into the neighborhood to arrest them. But there were Black men in our neighborhood who spent time on the chain gang. My father's actual patrol area was in the city of Columbia, in what was the Reed Street area of that era. And I remember once his coming home and, really yelling at me not to touch his car because it was poison on the car. And not too long after that, he moved on into other work. All of the men in Ridgewood, or practically all of them, were top-level craftsmen, bricklayers and carpenters. They did significant work on what they call the bomb plant in the Augusta area, and they built the Charleston naval base. They did the cement work there, and I can remember them going down. We eventually actually moved to Charleston and lived there for a few years when I was a very young child, because the work was very steady for cement masons, at the naval base. Ridgewood also produced the first African-American nurse who sued the United States government to get the rights for Black nurses to work at the Veterans Hospital. That was Carrie Lou Hollis Taylor. And of course, recently we learned about the very unique role of Deacon Benjamin Mack, who was the deacon in the Ridgewood Baptist Church, where I was a member and where my family had been members for years. And while we knew him as being involved in the NAACP, we had no clue about his important role in SCLC and being a top lieutenant to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He was the education director for that organization.
Everybody looks forward to Benjamin Mack's dynamic teaching techniques at the Citizenship Education School. I'm disgusted with our public school system because we aren't taught Negro history. But we can do something about it. If we organize to get political power, we can start dealing with the school boards. We can control our own education. We can learn Negro history in the schools. We can teach the great spirit of the civil rights movement and create a desire to learn more about ourselves and prepare our children for a good life.
Deacon B.J. Mack, 1967.
The community raised the children. And so I can remember all of us gathering on the camp road probably around noon on Christmas Day, sharing toys and skating up and down the camp road. It was like the only paved road in Ridgewood at that time. So that's where we would end up gathering at Christmas and sharing our toys and all of that. And Ridgewood was a very safe community. I actually recall as a child the Ku Klux Klan coming through Ridgewood shooting guns. And what I saw, there weren't any cowering men in Ridgewood. They got their guns and shot back. You know, there was no running and hiding and, you know, looking for some place to hide. No, they pulled out their guns, their long guns and pistols, and they were out shooting just like the folk who were coming through the neighborhood. So we didn't see a whole lot of that happening up in Ridgewood. You know, people didn't come in Ridgewood and harass people in Ridgewood. It was just really a wonderful place. I can remember when my father was at the Navy Yard, he confiscated sugar in fairly large amounts and stacked it up on the porch at our house and just told the people, come get your sugar. And he one time had my uncles in Georgia, my mother's people, ship some watermelon from one of their fields. And he put those on the porch and told people, just come get your watermelon. So he brought Joe Louis to the house on a visit that Joe Louis made. And you could just see just hundreds of little black boys just running, you know, toward our house. And so they came and all stood around in the yard and, you know, had a chance to talk to him. I consider all of the folk who came out of Ridgewood, you know, Estelle Trapp, you know, much younger generation, but she was the first African-American female to join the City of Columbia Police Department. And, but I consider so many of the people who grew up in that community to have been heroic.
I was working with Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And as a part of them giving us assignments to go to work, one of my assignments was to try to integrate the Columbia Police Department. So with the coaching of B.J. Mack and Charles Trapp, they said, one of the places that you will go will be Southern Bell. That was one of the places that we had to go take a test to integrate. And the other one was Columbia Police Department. And the amazing thing was, none of us knew we had to take a civil service exam to be a meter maid. And I'm going, oh my God. So our going there to integrate, it was all prompt through B.J. Mack and Charles Trapp. And of course, it was never my intent to be a meter maid. It was never my intent to even become a police officer. But after becoming a meter maid, it was so much fun. Then I saw that the job was power. And after working as a meter maid for 3 years, they disbanded the meter maid program and we started a cadet program. So I was one of the last ones to leave the street. So I had to train the first set of cadets that walked the streets of Columbia. And after disbanding the meter maid program, starting with the cadet program, they said, well, you're not gonna have a job now. And I said, you mean we don't have anywhere to go? And the chief said, no. I said, then you need to put me in your office. And they said, do you have any typing ability? I said, yes. So I went into records, working in records, and with most of the things at the police department, I was a first. I opened a lot of doors. And they said, well, if you can type, then you can work in records. I said, I can type. I can take shorthand at about 85 words a minute. And I type about 105 words a minute. And they went, you do all of that and you're working as a meter maid? And I said, yes, because that's what I want to do. But they didn't know that I was sent there to integrate the police department. And that was one of the things that I could not tell them, because I knew during that era, I would have been fired. I never would have gotten in the door, and had I gotten in there, I wouldn't have stayed long. And so after working in records for about a year, I told them, you know, you don't really have anybody here that I can go to lunch with, so you need to hire some more black girls. And the chief said, do you know anybody that's qualified? I said, I know lots of young people that's qualified. At the age of 27, I'm going, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? I started working, and I was one of 6 black females to start working at the Columbia Police Department. And of course, as time went by, some of the girls found a job difficult to work. And the chief said, what's your intent? And I told him, I'm gonna get your job. I want your job. I want to be the chief. And then one of the captains said, no, you won't even make it past patrolman. You will never be promoted to anything, nothing. I said, are you really serious? So what makes you think that I'm not qualified to get that job? And he said, well, I don't know that you have enough education to do that. So readily I enrolled at the University of South Carolina. And I received my associate degree because I had to get ready for them for promotions. And he said, oh, so you've gotten your associate degree? And I said, yes. And then he said, well, you know you have to go to the academy I said, yeah. Now, the strange thing was, there were many guys working at the police department who were grandfathered in, who never went to the academy. Here I am, a female, walking the beat at night, working midnight shifts. And when I first started working there, you had to walk the beat for at least a year and a half, or 2 years before you received a car to drive. So midnights, I walked the beat, I walked through alleys, and they said, oh, this chick, she ain't scared of nothing. I said, no, only God. And I said, you know, this ain't good enough. This just ain't good enough. And they were saying, oh, I said, well, when do we take the test to start being promoted to different positions? And he said, but you don't have a degree. And I had gotten enough time. I'd been in long enough. That summer, I knew I was going to get my associate degree. I said, yes, I will, because the test was going to come up in September. So I knew I would have my associate degree by then, because I was going to graduate in May. And I told them, I said, oh, yeah, I'll be ready. I'll be ready. Not telling them that I had gone to the University of South Carolina. And in between that, you know, I was raising a family. I was going to the police academy. And I was taking courses at the University of South Carolina. So, of course, you know, my plate was just full. But it all worked out. I was the first female to ever maintain the rank of captain. I knew it was important that I do good in order to make sure that other females, and color didn't have anything to do with it. I felt that because of the danger of the job, if you were capable, why not promote us? I knew I had to succeed, knowing that first of all, we didn't have many black females working. And at that time, I think we had a total of about 10 or 11 females, total white and black. But I knew in order for me to maintain and to encourage other black females to become a part of the police department, I had to keep doing good. I started the Columbia Police Department Explorer Program, had about 56 guys. Now, this is where you really feel good. Today, our deputy chief, Meron Calley, was one of my explorers. Out of that 56 kids, 15 of them became police officers. Deacon B.J. Mack and Deacon Charles Trapp saw that we would walk from C.A. Johnson High School to the downtown area, which was Main Street, to get signs from Bethel AME Church, which was located on Sumter Street at the time, that we would go down there every afternoon and march to try to get the downtown area integrated. And then later on, Deacon Mack said, I think you would be a good person to work with voter registration. So I said, what we got to do? I was a young girl. And I went, what I got to do? He said, you got to go door to door and knock on people's doors to see if they're registered voters. I said, well, I can do that, Mr. Mack. He said, yeah, because you love to talk. So I said, I'll do it. I don't have anything else to do. So in going out and trying to get people to register to vote was one thing. But then I went back to them and I told them, well, you know, a lot of the seniors can't write their name they're still making exits. So he said, then we need to get you trained in Southern Leadership Conference so you can go out and not only encourage people to vote, but also to teach them how to read and write their name. And I said, okay, not knowing, being energetic, that the job was dangerous right here in Columbia. I'll never forget, we were doing marches and door knocks down in Camp Furnace, which was at one time called Black Bottom. The houses were all shotgun houses. And anytime we went there, the people that lived there, and blacks and whites, you could step off of one of them's porch onto another porch, but they never mingled together. And whenever we went, a group of us went down there, they would always sick dogs on us. Sometimes they would threaten to shoot us. And I'll never forget, Mrs. Hammond was there, and she said, I'll help you all work this out. So we started teaching classes at their church in Black Bottom. And later on, we went to other churches in the backwoods of Columbia to teach older people how to read and write. The first time we went to a march in Atlanta that was from Dr. King's father's church, the Ebenezer. And then we went back again to another march in Atlanta, and they said, now this is the big one. We're going to Selma and Montgomery. I don't know if we can do that. Well, they convinced my mom that my brother and I should go because they was trying to get large numbers of people to go. So here we are, going out at a march, get in Selma, Mr. Mack, Mr. Trapp gets tied up because they worked extremely close with Martin Luther King. And Andy Young as well, who later became the mayor of Atlanta. And they all went to jail that day. So that completely separated us from Mr. Mack and Mr. Trapp. And Bernice Beatrice McKnight was also with us, but she and another lady went with another group. So here we are, thousands of people walking to go across that bridge in Selma. And I'm going, oh my God, my mom's gonna kill us. My brother and I just had to hold on to him because it was just terrible the way they were beating people and kicking people. I was 17 and my brother was 14. He was tall, but anybody could look at us and tell us that we were extremely young. And of course, I knew it was my responsibility of trying to get us back home, but Mr. Deacon Mack, not Deacon Trapp, ever said anything about, if we get separated, this is what you need to do. I guess they thought we were going to be together all the time, but it didn't work like that. So here we are in the center of all these places, and I think we got on a bus that got us back to Atlanta. And after we got back there again, we had to try to bum a ride back to Columbia. We went to a conference in Dorchester with Dr. King. And you know, the amazing thing is, I sat right next to the man, never knew he would be that great. And there were many people with cameras. And I never thought, oh, I said, well, we just gonna be working hard. But I never thought I would, he would be as great as he was. And here I am sitting right next to him and never took a picture. That was just terrible. That was just terrible. But he did great things. So it was good to know that I was associated with a group that was that strong. We love to say, because I came from a large family, that we were so poor in Ridgewood, we took the OR off of poor and made it po. And so, people would always say, you're not going to amount to anything. So the only thing I knew was to go to church. But they did encourage us to go to school. It was important to get a good education. But we was in that era where we had outside toilets. There wasn't a whole lot of houses in Ridgewood that was well built. You would, in the afternoon or any time, you could see the chickens or the cats or the dogs running underneath your house. We were a poor community. But as years passed, and because I was determined that I was going to do something with my life, I was one of the Girl Scout leaders at Ridgewood Baptist Church for over 25 years. And to know that all of the young girls that was under me, many of them became Girl Scout leaders at the church. But to know that I went from meter maid to captain and then a candidate for the chief of police and one of 3 finalists, I said, what more can you ask for? My encouragement is to young people, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter the label that people give you. Don't wear the label that they give you. And learn to achieve whatever is in your mind, because my thoughts has always been, God didn't give me your mind. He gave you your mind. And you can achieve anything that you want to achieve in life, but you got to be determined in spite of the things that might happen, regardless to how bad they are. You can always clean them up and just keep on reaching for the stars. That's what we were told. Reach for the stars.
Well, I believe that the tradition of strength and personal integrity, bravery that came out of Ridgewood over so many years will continue to come out of Ridgewood. I think that there is a solid rock. The same church that has served that community continues to serve that community, the Ridgewood Baptist Church. Because of the church's foundation and the kinds of things it's doing, there still is the root in that community for good things to continue to come forth.